Building a modern arrow takes a few components. Once you've gone out and purchased these components, they'll look something like this. You're going to have an arrow shaft of your choice that will suit your bow. You're going to have fletching for your bow, a nocking point that you're going to use on your shaft. You'll also have a point and an insert for some arrows, or just a straight glue-on point. These are two different points. I'm not going to touch too much on these, they're pretty straightforward and simple to put in. You have glue for your fletching, glue for your knot. You can purchase glue that's good for both. And last but not least, a fletching jig. These are the materials at minimum that you're going to need for your arrow build. Other materials that are optional can be a pin. Pins are really handy for doing things like clearing out any blockages in your glue, because you want a nice even stream of glue to come out of the end of your nozzle. And a razor blade. Razor blades are very handy. Sometimes you have to cut down your fletchers, or you might have to remove old wrapping from your arrow shaft. The first thing we're going to do is install the nock. Currently I'm using arrows that are in need of repair on my range. At the end here we have a place for our nock. There are two different types of nocks that you're going to find. Ones that insert into the shaft, or ones like this that will have a cone end with a nocking point simply slips over like that. And we just have to glue this one down. Otherwise, your slip-in nocking points, you will just push in and twist to the appropriate position and it will lock. Gluing your nocking point is quite simple. Simply apply glue to the end of your arrow, for this particular arrow, just on one side. When I put the nock on, I'm going to push down, and twist to gather the glue over the entire inside. And that's how we install this nocking point. Once you've installed your nocking point, on a bare shaft you'll have room for your fletchers. It's important to note what kind of fletching you use, because some fletchings being so short can end up quite far down your arrow shaft, or some that are quite long can end up too close to your nock. This is easily solved with your fletching jig. Simply take off your clamp, push your nocking point into the clamp effectively, and make sure that it's on the right setting. This particular clamp you can make a 4 fletching arrow, or you can make a 3 fletching arrow. With your clamp, what you want to do is have a line drawn on it to know where the end of your fletcher is going. I have a large fletcher, so I've put it quite far away from the nock to give the tail end room to come back towards your face. If I had it up the end of the arrow, that fletcher would be right in the archer's face. So what we're going to do now is line this fletcher up with that mark. Make sure not to put these in backwards. Make sure that they all go in the same way. Alright. Helps if I don't knock over the fletching jig. Here we go. As you can see, that is now in line with that mark, and it's even all the way along. If you get little bows like this, simply open the clamp, tuck it up until it sits nice and flat. Make sure to wipe down your arrow shaft so there's no grease residue from your fingers or any other contaminants that on the shaft. Otherwise it can inhibit your fletching's ability to stick to the shaft. The next thing you want to do is glue it on. I'm using Boeing Fletch-Tite. This is a fantastic thing to use for all fletching applications. This is where the pin's going to come in handy. This has been sitting for a little while, so we just want to make sure that nozzle is clear. Get a pin, poke it down, make sure it's all good, which it is. Now we don't want to cover this entire surface with glue, otherwise we'll have too much glue. What we want to do instead is put dots. So we're going to squeeze our glue till we get a little dot at the end, and then what we're going to do, every inch or so, just dot it along. Then once we've finished dotting, see if you can see those dots. Once we've finished dotting like that, we use the side of the glue stick to wipe along the edge. And that spreads enough glue out along the whole thing. Your fletching clamp will fit into a groove cut at the end, and it will rest on your arrow shaft with another locking position up the opposite end. Next trick is one finger on either end, push down on your arrow for about 10 seconds, and once that 10 seconds is up, you can release the clamp and just give it a few more seconds just to set itself in position. What I am not using today is an arrow wrap. An arrow wrap is the white in between the fletching there. All that is a sheet of sticky plastic that will stick around that shaft, and it helps with two things: visibility, and also helps the fletching adhere to the shaft. It's not necessary, but it is an option you can have. Once we have our last fletching on, we can take off the clamp, remove our arrow. These will still be wet at this stage and a little bit fragile. What we want to do to help them is to add a dot of glue just at the end of each fletcher and then on the back side as well. This will help them to stay on the arrow shaft when it comes past the rest. The glue will act as a ramp and a fastener. So all we want to do, get our glue stick, put a dab of glue on each end. And that is one finished arrow. So we've got our point inserted up here. If you had a different type of point to what I had, and I didn't show you the install of this today because it's quite simple, so that's what we're going to show you next. Today was a point install. Now a point install is quite straightforward. I unfortunately didn't have any arrows to actually do this on, so I'm going to give you a really basic rundown, and it's quite straightforward. For a point, you want a two-part epoxy, something that's going to set very hard and it's going to be very, very difficult to pull out. This is obviously because that's the part that goes into the target or the animal that you'll be shooting, and it takes the brunt of the force, so we want something that's strong and sturdy. Point installation can come in two manners. One is that it will be a fixed point. You will not be able to remove it, and it will not have an insert. Basically what you'll get is a point that will have a nib on the end and then a thinner tube below it to go down into the arrow shaft. All you want to do is mix your two-part epoxy, put a small dab of it on one side, and then twist it into the arrow shaft. You may have to give it a bang on a table or a block of wood just to get it in all the way. And then let it sit overnight to become properly cured before you go out shooting them. The other way is you'll have an insert. Now that is pretty much exactly the same process. Two-part epoxy, you want to put a little dab on one side with the point screwed into the insert, bang it on a table to get it in. Just make sure that you don't put glue between the insert and the arrow tip, otherwise you'll glue your tip in. So that's the basics of how to put points in.